Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode. And before I dive in, I want to make sure that you've already signed up for my More Love meditation experience starting in exactly 1 week. So, all you need to do is go to terricole.com/more love. It's totally free. Don't you want to spend 10 days hanging out with me? And then we're doing live training on day 10. So, yeah, you do want that. I decided not to have it be a challenge, with quotes around that, because, wow, man, isn't life challenging enough? It is. Have you listened to the news lately? Life is challenging enough. But what we could use is more love and more inner peace. And that's exactly what you're going to experience. So check it out. Go to terricole.com/more love and sign up. I will see you there. We start in a week. Anyway, moving on to today. In today's episode, I'm actually going to be giving you the 5 steps that I've created to attract better, healthier love into your life. And this is for you whether you're single or partnered. It doesn't matter, because you might want to up-level the quality of love or connection that you have in a relationship currently, or you might be seeking to attract your soulmate. Either way, these steps are for you, because really it all begins and ends with you. So, the first step in this process is self-awareness. So why do we care about self-awareness? The first thing is you need to be aware that something needs to change. You need to be willing to admit that whatever it is that you've been doing maybe isn't working the way that you hoped that it would. You need to be aware of your history, what you've experienced in your life. And I think that it's easy to be in denial of what we've experienced in our life. And so it's important. Your awareness that something needs to change is the most important thing. And we're going to start to be aware of our stories. What stories are you telling about what has or has not happened in your love life? Right? Because you got to think about it. You are 50% of every relationship that you've ever been in, because it would be impossible for you to be any other percentage. It's 50% you and 50% that other person. And even if that other person is behaving terribly, your 50% is what you do in relation to what they're doing. Right? So awareness is so incredibly important. It's really only when you get really clear about your 50% that you can change anything. So awareness is always the precursor to everything. And then we move into the second step, which is actual self-knowledge. So why does this matter? This really means knowing yourself without judgment. Not blaming yourself, not blaming the other person, but knowing yourself and what you experienced. You have to unpack everything that happened in your life, what you learned about love, what you saw within your parents' relationship or your caregiver relationship. All of those things impact who you become in a relationship. Because this is what we learned from, right? You need to become an expert on you before you can really change anything in your relationship, or before you can attract someone that you really want to. Part of this process means opening that drawer of memories that maybe you'd rather not, that maybe you'd like to throw away, that you wish you didn't experience, or that weren't there. It's so easy for us to compartmentalize or to minimize what we experienced in childhood by saying, oh, it's so long ago, it doesn't matter. I don't want to keep blaming my parents. It's nobody else's fault but my own. I find that so many of the women in my crew are very quick to take full responsibility, which of course we must do ultimately. But by actually looking back into those memory drawers in an honest way, you're not blaming your parents. We don't go back there to blame them. We go back there because it's basically the scene of the crime, so to speak, and we need to go back there. We go back there for a deeper understanding, not necessarily to scapegoat anyone about what has or hasn't happened in our life. In my own life, I learned all these things about love from my parents, covertly and overtly. So I don't think that my mother wanted me to, I don't think she wanted to teach me that, men were less than women, and that men were people to be managed, and that there was no way to sort of have an equal relationship with men because we were too busy trying to manipulate them or avoid them being upset about something, like all of that. But that is what she taught me. So through my own process, I had to unlearn those things, because it's why I didn't never wanted to get married. I was like, oh, that sounds just terrible. Like, who the hell wants to spend all of eternity walking on eggshells, feeling fearful, keeping secrets? Ugh, fuck, that is what I say. So anyway, you all have your own stories as well, right? We're beginning to understand the way that we were raised in the self-knowledge piece, how that has impacted our own love story, for better or for worse, right? So then we move into step 3. And don't worry, I'm going to have a whole guide that you can just download. So you'll have questions and stuff to help you get to the bottom of your own. But so then we're going to move into the step 3, which is self-acceptance. And this may sound like, well, duh, obviously, but most people don't accept what they've experienced. They don't accept themselves. They act like they will accept themselves once they get that job or once they lose 20 pounds, right? You have to also be able to accept the things that have happened in your life and the way that they impacted you before you can move on, right? Because there's the only place that we can change anything from is from a place that is real, that is an authentic place. So I used to have all these, like I used to have 2 kinds of memory drawers, right? The real ones that I would never open that drawer, but I would have like the whitewashed, more dreamy memories. I don't know, it's like as if I put a filter on the memories, or maybe it was things that I saw in pictures, and it's almost like having a selective perception of the way things were, because I didn't want to deal with the things that were painful about the way they actually were. And the reality, you guys, is that we all have stuff in our childhood. We all had painful experiences. None of our parents were perfect, because people are just humans. We're not perfect. Every one of you who's ever parented, I've made a million mistakes. Who doesn't? You just hope when you get older, you can just say you're sorry for the ways that you failed them, and that encourage them to get a lot of therapy and everything can work out. But it isn't about perfection, and it's not disloyal, right? It isn't disloyal to accept the fact that your parents were imperfect. We don't need to demonize them either, but it's a very important part of this process. Basically, you have to be able to accept the pain or the disappointment that you experienced and question what you learned about love. Did somebody teach you that love and pain go like this? If so, we need to unlearn that by separating those 2 things, even if love and pain went like that for your parents. Those of you who are listening and not watching, sorry, you can't see me, but I'm putting my hands together, right? Even if that were the case, that doesn't mean that love and pain have to go together for you. And I'm positive that love and pain do not need to go together. I mean, listen, there'll be some disappointment because we're all fallible humans, right? We're all flawed. But you know what I'm talking about. Some relationships are extremely painful. They are abusive. It's just a cycle of abuse or jealousy or bickering or whatever. And even that, to me, is painful. It's just so friggin' boring. And it's such a waste of time. And I think that there's a lot of conflict in the many years that I've been a therapist that I would find clients have around either they feel guilty admitting that their parents' thing wasn't great, or that their parents didn't do a great job like modeling healthy love, let's say. And they feel like they're blaming, like they feel very much like they want to say, like, I should have figured this shit out by now. Like, I don't want to blame my parents. I don't want to blame anybody. But understand that being in acceptance isn't about blaming. It is about just being like, okay, this is what happened. Because it really is the place that we must start if we want to build something different. We can't build it on, my filtered memories. Like, that doesn't work. because the dysfunction that we internalize is still there. And if we don't bring that up from the basement of our minds, right? I like to say that, it's like we could hide that bag of shit in the sub-basement of the sub-basement. You know what, though? The main part of the house always smells kind of shitty. You understand what I mean? Like, you really can't escape it, because those experiences and feelings don't just go away. And by honoring them, by talking about them, by acknowledging them, and by accepting them, we can then do something different. But denial is something that really does keep us stuck. You have to think about acceptance without judgment, right? We're not judging you or your folks or anybody, right, of what happened. Be loving towards yourself. We're really moving into becoming the observer, because that's where all the information is. And if we become the observer and say, ugh, I should already be over this, or ugh, I hate my mother is the worst, I hate her, or I hate my father, whatever it is, you're like leaving the data on the table, right? You're actually leaving the information there, because you can't be like gathering intel and blaming simultaneously, because they're two different things. So that acceptance piece of not just what we experienced, but of all of it, like our parents, let's just assume in a generous way that they did the best that they could with the consciousness they had at the time, right? That's all we can do. So let's move it into the step 4, which is one of my faves, but I find is probably one of the hardest for people to do, which is self-compassion. So this takes time for people to get to, but honestly, it is super essential to get there. Because if you have that mean girl or that mean guy inside, if you're constantly putting yourself down, negative self-talk, it really is hard to be compassionate. And you are basically setting the bar in your life and in your relationships. The way you treat yourself, you're basically broadcasting with your energy, with your language, with everything, how it's okay to treat you. So being self-compassionate is the first step towards getting to a place where you are treating yourself as well as you treat other people in your life. Because I find so much of the time, the women in my courses and my private clients that I've had, if I say back to them the dialogue of their inner mean girl that I've heard over the years, and I said, would you ever say that to your best friend, your little sister? They're like, oh my God, of course not. You're like, right, hi. So of course not. How about you stop doing that for you, right? And part of this process is I love to like really dial into the inner child during this step, which is to get a little picture of you as a child, maybe put it on your little wallpaper on your phone, someplace where you'll see it, and really have compassion for the things that you experienced as a child that were hard. Just have compassion. Stop judging. Just chill. There has to be this process as we're moving towards basically raising our love vibration, because that's what this whole episode is about. That piece is so crucial, and there's almost no way to do it. You can try to fake it till you make it, but the reality is, if you really don't master this piece, this step 4, self-compassion, you will likely be looking for that compassion from other people, which sometimes you'll get it, sometimes you won't. But the problem is, if we are depending on others to give it to us, then they can take it away as well. And now we're coming from a place of need. We're showing up in these relationships from this place of need, like, you need to do this for me because I refuse to do it for myself. And most of the time with my clients and groups, they didn't even know they could do it for themselves. So let's take it out of the blame place and just bring it to a place of become aware that self-compassion, this step 4, is absolutely your job. And you would be shocked when you master this process, being kinder to yourself, relating to yourself like a 5-year-old kid that you love, how things will shift in your life. Because this extends to everything. Do we work ourselves to death? That's a lack of self-compassion. Do we not rest when we're tired? That's a lack of self-compassion and being dialed into how you feel. So it's a really important step in this overall process of raising your own love vibration. You guys, this process, it really is about vibration, because we are all energy. And what you put out there will attract like energy into your life. So as you go through these steps, you are raising the type of love you attract, the type of interaction you will tolerate or you will initiate in a current relationship. And it's never too late. Listen, I don't know how flexible your partner is if you're in a relationship, but we don't have to worry about them, because all of what I'm giving you today in this episode and the downloaded guide, these are all things that I want you to think about and to shift within yourself. Because again, how you approach your partner has everything to do with how they respond. When we come at someone in a blaming way, you need to be more sensitive. You could just be speaking Mandarin. Like, nobody knows what that means. So we have to have the internal shift. All of this about love and about high quality love, raising our love vibe, raising our love IQ, it's all about self-knowledge. It all leads to the last step of this process, which is, can you guess? Can you guess? It is self-love. And actually, all right, I'm going to say step 5 is a combo of self-love and self-celebration. You know, self-acceptance is sort of, to me, it's a very important part of it, but there's something like depressing about it, as like that can't be the bar. Self-love, right? Self-celebration, like embracing who we are. This doesn't mean like giving yourself a pass on everything. This doesn't mean feeling entitled to all things in the world. It really does just mean appreciating what's unique about you, treating yourself with respect, treating yourself with kindness, with compassion, taking the time to become aware, to know yourself, to accept yourself, right? To give yourself that compassion. That's step 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then this moves us into self-love and self-celebration, which really is actually more a way of life than it is a step. Because when you really love yourself, you make decisions, you make choices, you get into relationships, you have interactions based on that self-regard. So if you had an abusive background, this is a longer slog, and I hope you sign up for the More Love Meditation Experience, because I'm going to be handling each day. I'm going to be giving you a different tool and strategy within that guided meditation. I took all the information that you guys gave me. A bunch of you took a survey for me. Thank you. Your top 10 love challenges, whether you're single or in a relationship. And that's what I based these brand new meditations on. So I hope that you do that, because it's a little bit more of a slog, a little bit harder if you come from an abusive background, simply because that normalized a chaotic background like that, even a neglectful background too, that normalized not being treated well. So now we're seriously unlearning. We are like trying to undo those neural pathways of repeated behaviors. And when we learn stuff like this as in childhood, it was really a survival thing then. So we learn to disavow what we need if you had an alcoholic parent, let's say, because it wasn't safe to have needs. Your needs were not going to be met. You were doing what you needed to do. And that is a very adaptive response. by disavowing your needs as a child so that you could parent the alcoholic parent or parent your little siblings or whomever, super adaptive. The problem is that that exact thing becomes completely maladaptive in adulthood. And then what happens is we have these repeating realities, I call them, where then we end up drawing these selfish mother effers into our life where we don't even know how to prioritize our feelings because we forgot that we ever knew how because it was so long ago. And so this process, these 5 steps getting you to self-love and self-celebration, it's basically a relearning of this process of how, if we had a healthy role model for love, in the end of these 5 steps, those are the skills you would have. So I'm not minimizing the work involved with this because it really does take a willingness to go back, right? It takes a willingness to look honestly with open eyes at what you experienced. And it makes us have to accept. We have to accept ourselves, accept life, friggin' just forgive everybody. God, it's just too much energy not to. And I'm not saying keep narcissistic parents in your life, forgive doesn't mean continue to put up with shit. It just means don't waste your precious, one of a kind, never gonna happen again life being super bitter, right? Because it's just, listen, time waits for no man or woman, right? The shit is continuing to march on, whether you continually talk about how much you can't stand your parents or hate your sister or whatever, or not. Why not? Excuse me. Why not? Focus on what's right in your life. Focus on getting empowered, right? That is what we can do. And that's what these 5 steps to better, healthier love will do for you. So if you like this episode, I hope you did. I hope you will share it all over your social media. If you're listening to the podcast and you like it, feel free to hop onto iTunes and give us a good review. That would be super nice of you. And you guys, I'm changing the name of the podcast for those of you who are listening to it. So it's the Terri Cole Show, which is what I should have named it to begin with. So don't worry if you don't see Hello Freedom anymore. It is because it is now the Terri Cole Show. And those of you watching on YouTube, hello. Feel free to drop all your comments right here. Make sure you go to terricole.com/more love and join me. I can't wait to spend 10 days with you and then a whole bunch of time actually teaching you tools and strategies to make 2019 your year of epic love. So thank you for sharing, for listening, for watching, and as always, take care of you.